Hi and welcome to another technology video. So in this video we are going to be focusing on pfSense and we're going to be running through the setup of pfBlockerNG. That's the devil version, it's the latest version. So just to go through our current build at the moment, we are running a fanless i3 8 gig device running pfSense. It's the latest 2.4.5 release, which is P1, which was released on the 9th of June, and we're going to be walking through the step-by-step process of setting up pfBlockerNG. So without further ado, let's get started. First thing you want to do is you want to navigate to your package manager, and as you can see we've got no additional packages installed. We're going to go to available packages and we're going to search for pfBlocker. Okay, as you can see here we've got two versions. We're going to be using the latest version and we're just going to go through and install that. So just step through the installation. This will then install all the dependencies and packages that you need. Okay, that was quick. Excellent. Right, so to get started you want to navigate to your Firewall option here and then go to pfBlockerNG, and the first thing you're presented with is a wizard. So we're going to run through the wizard. Very easy to do. Click on next and we're going to click on next. We're going to select our inbound or outbound interfaces. So the inbound interface is your WAN interface, that's traffic coming into your network, and the outbound interface is your LAN interface, and that's the connection from your LAN that's then going out to the internet, and in between is obviously the firewall. If you're running bespoke VLANs or IP addressing, you want to make sure that your VIP address here doesn't clash with any other network that you're running on your environment, and the same for the ports. If it is, then you want to choose a port or choose a VIP address that doesn't clash. For us it doesn't. We're using standard 192.168.0/24 addressing for our network, which is at home. It's a flat network. There's no VLANs, no specific routing or anything like that in place. So once you've clicked through the wizard, click on finish and that will get things set up for you. Just takes a couple of seconds. And then the first thing it's going to do is going to go down and download all of the lists that it's configured as part of the standard option. So we're going to let that run through, and once that's completed we're going to go through and we're going to set up all of the various options. As you can see here we've got a downloading update 404 not found. I wouldn't worry about that. Occasionally if it can't talk to the remote host then you'll get errors in the downloads, but it's not a problem. It will keep retrying and eventually it will go through. The nice thing about this is if there are any duplicates it will filter those out. As you can see on that list there, there's a whole load of duplicates, and here as well, and it will remove the duplicates, so it just presents you with the unique addresses. So this will build up a database and it will go through and sort out all of the addressings in there. Okay, so that's completed. It will confirm your table entry size for your firewall. As you can see here the hard limit is 400,000. That's all we need to, don't need to pay any attention to that at the moment really. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is go to our general, and you want to make sure that pfBlockerNG is enabled. We've accepted all the defaults here. We don't change any of these, we just leave things alone, and we haven't had any problems at all with that. So the next thing you want to do is go to your IP options. You want to make sure that it's enabled. CIDR aggregation, so that basically looks at smaller IP ranges, and if it deems that actually it can fall into a larger one, then it'll combine that into a larger block, but we don't use that. And suppression, so this will stop your private addresses from being blocked, as you can see here. It's all self-explanatory really. Placeholder IP address, so again you want to make sure that this is not in use on your network. It's a loopback address effectively, so you don't need to worry so much about that. We don't force the global IP logging. We are not using ASN reporting. This bit here is fairly important if you want to use IP reputation or the GeoIP facility on here. So if you want to block countries from accessing your system, then you can do that here. You need to do that on the MaxMind database on the MaxMind website. Create yourself an account. It's completely free, and you will create yourself as part of that a license key. So I'm going to add that shortly. Okay, so the inbound firewall rules, again, any traffic coming in, you just want to block it. So in other words, drop the traffic. You do have the ability to reject it as well, but what that does, it tells the remote website that you have blocked them basically, or you have rejected their packet from coming in. You don't want to do that, you just want to drop the traffic silently. If you're using it for your LAN, which we are, we want to reject it, because actually what we want to do is we want to throw a notification back to the client if it's in the browser, but it also gives you the ability to investigate issues on your LAN. So you want to reject that, because then it tells the client actually that it's not being allowed. We are going to be using floating rules, so tick this option here. That's going to create a firewall rule for the Ipv4 lists as a floating rule. Otherwise what it'll need to do is to create lists on your LAN and your WAN side of the firewall. So if you use a floating rule, then it'll cover it across both of them. The firewall route firewall rule order we leave alone. We're not changing that at all. And for our firewall auto rule suffix, we have it as the default. We haven't changed that at all. And again, the kill states, we leave that as it is there. So once you're done with that, save your IP settings. I'm now going to add the MaxMind key. Which I'll have to blur out, obviously. So I'll just move that over there. Enter my MaxMind key, and I've left the check to disable MaxMind CSV updates. Don't use that, and it works fine for us. But we're not actually using any GeoIP, but we do like to have the IP reputation page there. So once you've done that, click on Save Settings. Under the IP section, we can then move to the Ipv4 lists. So automatically enabled is the priority 1 collection. Now this is important because if you've got any infected clients on your LAN, you don't want to talk to those remote hosts, excuse me, and you want to set the action to deny both. So you want to deny inbound and outbound. So you want to stop traffic from getting there, and you want to stop traffic coming from there as well. And we're going to update that list every hour. So we click on Save and OK that. We can go through the lists in a minute. IPv6, we're not using IPv6 on our network, so we leave that blank. And GeoIP, again, as I explained earlier, we're not actually using any of that functionality, but you've got the ability to go in here and configure any of the lists that you want. It's hugely extensive. So this, you probably want to do this if you've got a web server, for instance, that's only serving the UK. You might want to block all the different countries from getting to it. And then under the IP reputation, in here, again, you've got the ability to either have lists based on the country exclusion or anything else that you might want to use. So Proofpoint, which is effectively pfSense, they've got an IP reputation here, and they create it in nice, easy to understand lists for you. So if you, for instance, if you want to block known DDoS attackers, then you would select that list here, and any IP that is in those lists, it will block it. But we're not using that at the moment. We may well do in the future if we decide to run a web server here. Okay, so now we move on to the Dns Bl settings. So again, we're going to make sure that it's enabled. Top level domains, if you want to block that, that's fine. What it does there, it will block the root of that domain. So if you block that, then it'll also block everything else underneath that, so all the subdomains as well. Here's our virtual IP address that we saw earlier. We're not changing any of the settings in here, and our web server interface is running on the LAN side. If you want to make sure that your web server is always available, then you want to tick this box, and that will create a floating rule for you to access it. This next section here is you can actually load your own block page onto the system. Again, we're just accepting the default, but if you wanted to do that, then create your own block page, and you would need to load it up under this location on your pfSense box. Dns Bl whitelist, so you automatically get a whitelist included here. We've actually previously used this, so we've got our own whitelist which is based on all of the lists that we use. So I'm going to copy that in here now so that I don't have to mess around with this whitelisting stuff in the future. It's only got a few in here, so because we use it at home, we don't want to block things on the MSN network or some of the Google ads and Google items that we've got listed down here, mainly because it stops YouTube working correctly. Once you've got your settings configured, I'm not going to go through any of these because we don't actually set any of these options in here at all. These are basically whitelist and exclusion lists. The only one that we do is for our Dns Bl whitelist is we've got some additional stuff in there, which is why we're pasting that in. Once we've done that, we save that, and then we can go to our groups. So the groups are various lists that we're using. However, we're not using these top two, so I am going to delete these, and I'll go through the lists that we are using shortly. We are using this malicious, which is made up of a load of different lists, and we'll go through those in a minute. Dns Bl categories, again, if you wanted to use either of these lists, so what these do, it basically groups together domains into categories, and then you can block a whole category if you want to. It's quite extensive. UT1 list, again, the only one that you might want to do is this malware list in here, but it's really up to you. We don't use any of these lists. We tend to rely on the domain blocking and the feeds that are already in place. And then the Dns Bl safe search, we don't use this, but if you wanted to redirect to a safe search, so always make sure that when you're on Google or whatever, actually the results are filtered, so it just forces safe search on those browsers. Update settings, so it will create its own cron job based on how often you tell the lists to update. Cron will eventually sort itself out, and it will tell you how long till the jobs are set up based on what you've configured. The reports option is used for looking at the alerts, and then the feeds are the part that we're now interested in. So there's a few things to run through here. So the first one is the Ipv4 abuse ransom tracker is no longer in use. That was discontinued at the end of December 2019. So if you click on the tick box here and go through, you will find it in here somewhere. There it is, ransom tracker abuse.ch. So that list is no longer in use. So if you delete that list and then save it, then when you come back to your feeds, you'll now see that that's got a plus next to. So in other words, it's deselected it. Everything else in here we want to keep in terms of the priority 1 IPv4 list, and then we want to scroll down and we'll have a look at the other lists shortly. So the other lists that we want to do are the malicious list, which was on the Dns Bl area. So as you can see on the left hand side down here, it'll show you what the lists are, whether it's Dns Bl, IPv6, IPv4, etc. So we're only using the IPv4 list as mentioned. We're not using these easy lists because we've deleted them, so that's why you can see a tick next to all of them. This is what we are interested in though, under the Dns Bl malicious group. So if you tick this box, tick this tick here, it will select everything in the list. But as I mentioned, the ransomware trackers are no longer in use, so we've got abuse DOM BL and abuse URL BL. So I'm going to tick this box. You can see them here. I'm going to remove those two lists again because they're no longer in use. And update frequency is once a day on those, and then we're going to save that. And then we can go back to our feeds again, scroll all the way to the bottom, back to our malicious area, and as you can see here, the two ransomware trackers are now not selected, which is correct. And we also want to untick MVPS. Most of the stuff for home is contained in these lists, and it's a real pain having to go through them and whitelist them all the time. So for us, we don't need it. You may want to use that though. So all of these lists are based on our experience for home use. If you're a business, then perhaps you might want that list blocked. But for us, we're going to delete that. And then we're going to save that again. And then we're going to go back to our feeds, scroll all the way down, and we're going to select a couple of other lists. So we're not using any of the phishing lists, but you could use those. We are going to select this one here. So this is BBCam 177. We're going to select that. The action here, you want to set it to unbound so that it is part of the DNS activities, uses the unbound DNS server because it's looking up domains, and you want to put the state to on, which means that it's going to update and it's going to use that list. And then you set your update frequency to once a day, and then save your settings. And then we go back to our feeds, scroll down again, so you can see now that that list is ticked. And we want to also now use this one here called URL Shorteners. Set that state to on, set the action to unbound, and then save those settings. Go back to our feeds again, scroll all the way down. So there's our URL shorteners now ticked, and the final one that we use is this coin blocker all cryptojackers. We're not ticking the box here because that's going to select all of them, and for our experience we only want to use the coin blocker all list. So we tick this over on the side, set our state to on, select unbound, leave our list as once a day, save those settings. So now when we come back to our groups, you can see here we've got cryptojackers, URL shorteners, and these other two here. The URL shorteners list is the default is weekly. Again, we don't need to change that. And in our whitelist that I showed you earlier, if I just bring that in here, the whitelist, we're actually using a URL shortener whitelist for YouTube videos. So that's all there is to it. The next thing that you want to do is to make sure that you've got all of the relevant lists. So if we click our update button, there we go, cron is now scheduled, so it's next going to run at midday 49 minutes time. You can either choose, if you choose upload, you can reload, you can either reload your various lists here, or you can update the whole system, so it'll update all of the lists. So in other words, what it's going to do is going to relook at all of the lists that you've got. Any lists that you've removed, it's going to delete those from the database. Any lists that you've added, it's going to download those lists and then add them to the database. And then it's going to reload your unbound resolver. So once that's completed, which it has done, we can now go back to our dashboard, and the thing that we are going to check, I'm just going to remove all of those. We like to have ours at the top here so we can see what's going on. So we've moved that up to the top, and because you moved it, you now need to save your dashboard. But these will start looking at all of your traffic and blocking accordingly. Anything that you've got configured in your whitelist, remember, you've got the ability to bypass. So let's go back quickly and show you how you would potentially whitelist something. So if you go to reports, and under alerts, you can see what we've currently got blocked. If you wanted to whitelist something, you just simply click on the plus sign, and that will then give you the whitelisting ability there. So we've got a couple here. If you want, click on the eye, that's going to, you can then have the ability to look up that domain against the threat domain list, and if you want to whitelist it, then you can click on the plus sign. And then over on the right hand side here, it will tell you which feed it's on. Okay, so that's all there is to it. If you've got any comments, leave them in the description field below. If you found that video useful, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel, and have a look at our open source playlist, because we've got a whole load of other pfSense videos that you might find interesting on there. Apart from that, just like to say thanks for watching.